Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football late Sunday night. Some massive news for the Texas A&M fans coming out of the transfer portal. Former five-star wide receiver Micah Hudson making it official, committing to Texas A&M. The thing that jumps out to me first is Mike Elko is very intentful in terms of what players and what positions he wants to address in the offseason. And I think one of those positions that emerged over the 2024 season was, hey, we need to get more playmakers in this offense. When you take a look at Texas A&M, I wouldn't say the wide receiver room is bad, but you probably want a couple more difference makers in this offense. Now you look at the young talent that is getting injected into this Texas A&M offense. Terry Bussey, Micah Hudson, both only going into year two. You have true freshman five-star wide receiver Jerome Miles coming into the 2025 class. All of the sudden, this wide receiver room is getting flipped on its head, and you're looking at it and saying, this is one of the more young, talented wide receiver rooms that you see in the country. Now, you look at Micah Hudson again. Is it a quiet, surprisingly quiet freshman year at Texas Tech? Yeah, absolutely. I'm nowhere close to selling my stock in Micah Hudson. We go back 12 months from now, or 12 months ago, I should say. I threw Micah Hudson into that elite wide receiver category with Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, and Cam Coleman. Now, he didn't have the production, the national media attention that those three did. I think from a capability standpoint, Micah Hudson has all those traits. And I think one of the things I love about Micah Hudson, he is a kind of do-it-all wide receiver. It is very easy to get this kid involved in the offense. I think the body control and the ball skills when that football is in the air, he's not the biggest frame at 6 foot, but his ability to go make contested catches back to the high school film, it's some next level stuff. His ability to have the short area quicks to create separation in those intermediate route trees is clearly evident. And I think my favorite attribute for Micah Hudson, and probably the biggest skill set that, in my opinion, was missing from Texas A&M last year, was, do we have guys that make you hold your breath when they have the football in space? I don't think Texas A&M did, outside of a guy like Terry Bussey. Micah Hudson, in terms of yards after the catch, he's that guy. I mean, whether it's making people miss, whether it's being extremely tough to bring down, Micah Hudson has a unique body type for a wide receiver. He's 6 foot, but he's about 200 pounds, has a thick lower half. He is very difficult for a lot of defensive backs to bring down from a physicality standpoint. I think he's an all-around wide receiver. I think he's going to be easy to just inject into this offense and get involved in a lot of different ways. And at the end of the day, if you're Mike Elko, just keep stockpiling these kind of weapons. Terry Bussey, Micah Hudson, Jerome Miles. I'd even throw in a guy like Ruben Owens in the running back room coming back healthy in 2025. This offense, to me, is going to have a lot of difference makers, and it's going to present a lot of problems for opposing defenses when you have this many guys that can really take over games. Fired up to get into a little Micah Hudson before we do, and as always, to the Texas A&M fans, especially y'all who are checking the boys out late Sunday night, can't thank you guys enough. It's been a blast breaking down these commitments. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Micah Hudson. I think to truly get into Micah Hudson, you have to go back to what he was coming out of high school. The film, the highlights of Micah Hudson coming out of high school, they were special. I mean, extremely productive as a pass catcher, got involved in the rushing attack as well. You start digging into it, and really what stands out to me is, one, the movement skills. I mean, this is a guy that, whether it's creating separation in his route trees, whether it's after the catch, I mean, he's so hard to deal with. I mean, his ability to change direction and create separation, it's next level stuff. Then you see what he can do after the catch. And then the contact balance. He's a guy that can make you miss. He's a guy that can bounce off tackles. He's a guy that, when that football is in the air, his ability to high point the football and control his body and the coordination that all requires, it is evident when you take a look at the film. I mean, he's so comfortable adjusting to the football in the air. I mean, he can be a contested catch guy. He can be a separation guy. He can be a yards after the catch guy. Now you're going to see kind of a little bit of both. One, we're going to create separation So smooth running routes, sitting it down in that zone, presentable, and we're just gonna make him miss. And it, like he's a human joystick. I mean, what he can do in terms of the circus contested catches, I love it. But I think my favorite attribute is those movement skills that he has. Now you're going to see a little body control. Like just throw it up for Micah Hudson, tiptoe the sideline and make a play. You see him line up in a variety of different spots. He's a guy that can be slot. Again, I like just throw it up to him and give him a chance. Let him go make plays. I mean, you see the bunnies he has, the body control he has, staying on his feet, and then getting after it after the catch. Do it all guy. A guy that you can line up on the boundary. You can line him up in the slot. You see him at times at high school kind of line up out of the backfield. I don't think you'll see that at Texas A&M. Again, now a contested catch, body control, physicality at the catch point. He's a box checker. And if you're Texas A&M, I think, project number one for me was you have a couple projects, and we've talked about it over the last couple of weeks. I think number one was more playmakers on offense. Micah Hudson certainly checks that box. I think project number two is making sure this offensive line is going to be up to snuff and continue to get better. Mike Elko's doing that in a couple of different ways. I think they'll get active in the transfer portal for offensive linemen, but I think Mike Elko knows more than anybody. You can't build a great offensive line through the portal. You have to recruit it at the high school ranks. I mean, you take a look at what they did. Lamont Rogers kind of headlining the group, bringing in a lot of talent on the offensive line. I think they had 7 offensive line commitments in the 2025 high school recruiting class. Mike Elko knows if you want to build a strong offensive line, it's got to be from the high school recruiting trail. That's what he's doing. I think the last step for Texas A&M is kind of replenishing not only the difference makers on the defensive line, but the depth on the defensive line. Texas A&M had the difference makers. I don't know if they had the depth last year. And that's something that you've seen a lot of guys go to the NFL draft. You've seen a couple guys go to the transfer portal. I think that's the next project for Texas A&M. I wouldn't be surprised if they grab 1 or 2 more wide receivers, as you can never have enough playmakers. But I look at it with the addition of Micah Hudson, who I think is going to have an immediate impact for Texas A&M. Say Micah Hudson, Terry Bussey, if Noah Thomas comes back, Jerome Miles as a freshman, you're stacking a really talented wide receiver room. Now, for me, the next step, have some difference makers on the defensive line. But I think secondly, and most importantly, got to have some depth. It felt like Texas A&M might have lacked a little bit of depth in 2024. They had dudes, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, guys that are going to go very high in the NFL draft. Did they have the depth? Did they have the 10 to 12 guys that they felt comfortable with playing? That's probably the next step for Texas A&M, replacing some really good football players, but just replacing some numbers as well. And they got some guys on campus over the weekend who certainly would satisfy that as well. Again, when you want to build the line of scrimmage, it starts on the high school recruiting trail, which you're seeing Mike Elko put a strong emphasis on. It's easy to go get wide receivers. You just saw Texas A&M do that. We'll see how they finish out. Mike Elko was aggressive last year in the portal. He's seemingly very aggressive this year as well, blending the two very well, to my opinion, as well. Recruiting the high school ranks like a top 10 program in the country, bringing in a top 10 transfer portal class as well. That's kind of the recipe when you're trying to build national championship caliber rosters. And you see Mike Elko, in my opinion, kind of working his way up to having a national championship roster. We'll close it down there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.